Alrighty, welcome to my video project presentation entitled SSCCC Resolution Lift. And so let's get into it. So, what is the SSCCC? Essentially, the SSCCC is the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, and it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan, student-led organization that represents and advocates for the voices of all California community college students. And they do this through pursuing state-level policy and lifting up student leaders. So, I am currently employed, technically, by the SSCCC through my role in the Student Senate here at Crafton Hills College. And for those who don't know, I am both the Vice President of the Student Senate as well as the college delegate, which means not only do I represent the students here at Crafton at the college level, but I also represent everyone at the regional and the state level. It's been a great privilege to have this job and this role, and I've actually found that I really enjoy student legislation. So I'm glad to be in this role. Resolutions. So, what are resolutions? They are proposals for basically statewide consideration and approved by student leaders and representatives. And each year, resolutions are written by California Community College students from across the state in hopes of seeing system-wide change to address current issues. Alrighty, I'm going to explain a little bit more about what the SSCCC looks like. So the SSCCC is broken down into 10 regions, all the way from Northern California to Central to Southern. There are 117 colleges. We just added the 117th last year, and they are based in San Diego in Region 10. And I should have put this on here, but within the system there are also 73 college districts, and San Bernardino Community College District being one of them. And the SSCCC currently services over 2.3 million students. Wow. That's more students than any other student-led organization in the state, which includes the Cal State and UC system. So, community college students have much more of a voice in terms of advocacy than they even realize. Alrighty, speaking of regions and our district, the San Bernardino and Riverside counties are in Region 9 of the SSCCC. Crafton and our sister college, SBVC, we're kind of exactly right in the middle of the region, with our schools going all the way up to Barstow and all the way down to Palo Verde. So we are a very big region. We are one of the largest. And with that, I'll kind of go into just briefly some examples of the actual resolutions being proposed this year in a matter of weeks, actually, which is both exciting and nerve-wracking. But here's just a little sneak peek of what's going to be talked about, so you kind of get an idea of what some issues being raised are and the type of legislation being considered. All right, speaking of proposals, here's mine. LIFT, aka Language Initiative for Future Talent. This is a resolution that I wrote along with the help of one of my senators, Sierra Mason, who is awesome. She helped me so much. I am so grateful for her. And it was actually sponsored by our very own College Academic Senate and our Student Senate. So, here's what it is. Each resolution is broken up into two sections. A whereas section, which is essentially what the author is talking about, the background, the issue itself. And then the resolved section, which is what the author is asking to be done. So in my whereas section, the main point is about how recently Cal Getsy was reformed to streamline the transfer process, but it prompted the removal of foreign language courses from general education pathways, and specifically Area 3B of Humanities. So community colleges and Cal States are no longer required to have foreign language as a general education requirement. So the issue is kind of increasingly more so now, being that colleges have little incentive to offer foreign language courses if it's not a requirement for transfer or graduation. And so more and more colleges are doing away with a lot of their language programs. And so here's the resolve section. This is what I'm asking to be done. First and foremost, resolve that the SSCCC make it a priority to advocate for the continuation and expansion of foreign language courses across the CCC system. So, like I said, colleges are lacking incentive to keep foreign language courses. So first and foremost, I am asking the Student Senate for California Community Colleges to advocate for foreign language courses to be kept, and really advocating for the importance. And the main ask that I'm asking for with the second resolved is that I'm asking that the California community colleges are required to offer a minimum of the two most popular foreign languages in the county of each community college, determined by county census data, to be offered at each CCC. So essentially, I did a poll of the students at Crafton, and when asked if they would take a foreign language course if no longer required, the majority said that they would not, unless the language had some cultural or geographical importance, which is to say that they would take a foreign language course if it had a relevance to the workplace or the cultural geographical environment of where they're at. So in our area, we're in Southern California. So of course, Spanish is a major language. It's incredibly useful in the workplace, especially in the medical field and educational fields, where you're gonna have patients or people whose first language is Spanish and may need you to help them translate. Or say the Loma Linda area. Languages popular there include Mandarin, Cantonese, Tagalog, and languages like that. So really depending on where you're at and what language is important to that area. And county census data helps a lot with that, because as we recently learned in our lessons, census data is really helpful for looking at demographical data. And then the third and fourth resolved kind of go together. They're essentially talking about ways to make it easier for implementing this resolution if it passes. The third one is talking about forming a task force, which talks about finding ways to make it more financially sustainable for colleges to offer these languages. And task force is basically a group put together, and it really helps keep people accountable when they're in the implementation process, and it just makes it easier for the whole system. The fourth resolved, I almost said whereas, the fourth resolved is talking about finding ways to simplify the process of finding and hiring language faculty, because one of the barriers to colleges having more foreign language programs is finding instructors, because it can be hard to find qualified instructors for certain languages. And so this is essentially asking them to kind of collaborate to find ways to simplify that process, and also asking the system to draft a toolkit regarding student language education for workplace readiness and provide continual guidance for language faculty instruction. So for those who don't know, a toolkit is essentially a collection of materials and guides and tools to help people learn more or educate others about a certain topic. So in this case, it would be geared towards helping people learn more about how language and language education applies to workplace readiness, ensuring that the languages and skills people are learning in these courses actually carry over to being prepared to use those skills in a workplace environment. Alrighty, kind of switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual data of this resolution now that we are 8 minutes into this presentation. So highlighted in blue here is one of the major sources I used in crafting my resolution. It was a study done by the Modern Language Association regarding enrollment in languages. So, speaking of, here's a table from the report highlighted, and this one is talking about percentages of programs with decreasing, stable, or increasing enrollment rates between 2016 and 2021. So, relatively recent, within the decade. And with that kind of peachish colored column, the decreasing column, it points out that there are some very large percentages of a lot of languages which are decreasing in enrollment rates. So some big contributors here, mainly Portuguese, Latin, Italian, kind of like the Eurocentric languages. A lot of them are kind of falling in enrollment rates and popularity. The rest of the languages on this list pretty much stayed stable, but you can see compared across each of the three categories that the decreasing column definitely has the largest percentages, which is sad to see. All right, figure 6. This one is in regards to Title VI funding and comparing it to language enrollment between 1998 and 2023. So for those who don't know, Title VI funding is federal funding that helps support international and other language programs. And as you can see from this graph, that it kind of, Title VI funding met or a little bit exceeded language enrollment rates around 2010, 2011, and then sharply fell, and ever since there has not been sufficient Title VI funding to meet language enrollment rates. These are just some fun tables that I threw in here just for your perusal. This one on the left is fall enrollments in 15 leading Indigenous American less commonly taught languages from 1974 to 2021. I just thought it was interesting. And then on the right, it is the same thing with European languages. As a trend I noticed in my research for this resolution is that European languages are often the least commonly taught languages across, like, not only the system, but nationwide, actually, which is kind of sad to see in terms of linguistic diversity, which is what I'm really pushing for in my resolution. Alrighty, talking again about the Chancellor's Office. The Chancellor's Office website has this amazing, beautiful resource called DataMart. And what DataMart is, it's kind of comparable to a census. It gathers a lot of different categories of data about enrollments and class types, award types, different types of demographics, and it's so helpful. And this is kind of what it looks like if you go into a specific category. This is the category I used in my data analysis for this project. Under Program Awards Summary Report, here I disaggregated the report by degree type and by year. So I looked at all the data from 1992 all the way to 2024. And as you can see here, it's broken down by Associates of Arts, Associate of Science, and then certificates, as well as State of California totals. I wasn't able to fit the entire report in one screen just because it is such a large Excel file. This is kind of what it looks like. And this is what I did for each category is I broke it down into decades. So this one was 1992 to 2002. And what I did is that for each academic year, I wrote the total awards for that academic year. And then I took the summation for all those values and then divided by the total number of years, which since it's a decade, it would be 10. And I got the average number of degrees awarded during that decade. And here's again another decade, 2002 to 2012. And these are for the state of California totals. And then this is for the certificate requiring 60 plus semester units. And in case you could not read my chicken scratch from my sticky notes, then I made it more presentable here. So just kind of going over again, I took the summation of the decade totals and I divided them by the number of years in the decade, which in this case n would equal 10. But in the case of the certificates, some award years, as you can see here, there were no degrees awarded. So in that case, n would equal 9 instead of 10. Alrighty, so taking all that kind of raw numbers, and what I did is I put them all into a pretty table I made in a Google Docs form, and I made it all pretty and presentable for you to look at. So as you can see here, I have the averages of the different award types and broken down by decade. And as you can see here, some of them don't have any data. Either there was no data reported or there were no degrees awarded. In that case, as you can see with the Associates of Arts for transfer degree, there was no data for that one. And as you can see already, patterns emerge in the fact that some decades and award types have more awards than others. So looking at the Associates of Arts degree, probably has the most number in the 2012 to 2022 decade on average. All right, and since I was just curious, I compared the state data, which is this, to all 117 community colleges in the system and compared it to our district. And something really, really interesting that I found is that our district actually has higher award numbers, meaning that people received more language degrees than the state averages. So, cross-comparing them, I put them in little graphs with pretty colors. In terms of the state awards summary for the Associates of Science and the Associates in Arts for transfer and their certificate requiring 60 plus semester units, their reported values were too small to be visible on the graph because of the scaling I used. I really couldn't find a way around that since some of the values in this table were so large, like the state of California total for the 2012 to 2022 decade, it's nearly 1,500. Meanwhile, the Associates of Science degree, it gets as small as 0.222. So I could not find a good way to scale that, but they are there, they're just not visible. And as we can see here, we can already see trends emerging in terms of differences between the state of California totals and the Associates of Arts degree. As we can see here, it looks like the 2022 to 2023 academic year had the highest state of California totals in comparison to any of the other decades or award years. And here's just a comparison between the state and the district. In the district, we can see the Associates of Arts for transfer, and very little is the certificate requiring 60 plus semester units. The scaling on this graph was a little bit easier to see just because, again, our district numbers were bigger than the state averages. So you're able to see a lot more trends than you are with the Chancellor's Office summary report. And as we can see here over time, an interesting trend for our district, which makes it unique, is that over time, our awards actually have increased with years, which is really interesting. All right, and finally, the summary. So just a interesting fact I found out in my research and my calculations is that 66.7%, there was a decrease of 66.7% in students being awarded language degrees in the past 10 years. This is going off of the state data, not our district data, just an FYI. But as we can see in this past decade, there's been that percentage of decrease, and an extrapolation that we can make from that is that language enrollment rates and awards being given in language degrees has overall decreased over time. And that is it for my presentation. I know it was really, really long. I'm very sorry about that. I really hope you did enjoy it. I had fun making it. And of course, any opportunity I get to talk about the SSCCC and student advocacy. So yeah, I do hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening and watching.